Welcome to our viewers and listeners here at home and, of course, around the world. I'm Cedric Peterson, and you're now inside government. My guest in this special edition is the Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs. Prime Minister, it's great to have you back in the program.
Thank you so much, Cedric. It's great to be back. And I must say, if I haven't said it yet, a happy International Women's Month. You know, we've claimed the whole month of March, and every chance I get, I got to big up women in leadership and women and girls all around the world who are choosing to challenge and fighting for equality.
And congratulations. We also like to extend that to the folks at Women's Desk who have done a phenomenal job, and DCOM has been assisting with the production aspect. Prime Minister, in our conversation, we want to get into the hot seat that you've been placed in as it relates to the coho. Now, you have to set the record straight here because there's quite a lot of information that's going out, some of it being deemed inaccurate as it's being placed in the public domain as it relates to the Caribbean Body for Reform and Development. Prime Minister, let's go ahead and establish the background for those who have just joined in, have not really been paying attention to the conversation as much, and are not able to follow or get an understanding. Provide us with a little background in relation to the Caribbean Body for Reform and Development. What is it about, and how does this all play out for St. Martin?
Cedric, I'm happy for the opportunity to do this in a forum that is trustworthy and to be able to tell the people of St. Martin what we've been saying since July of 2020. As everyone knows, we've been facing a pandemic. Before that, we were still in recovery from Hurricanes Irma and Maria, whereby we had to get liquidity support. We were already in a liquidity support trajectory with the Netherlands. We were not yet self-sufficient. As such, there was a constant approval from CFT being needed, etc. Then comes the pandemic. Then comes a shutdown of our economy, lack of income, further throwing us into a liquidity deficit, meaning not having enough funds to carry our day-to-day expenditures, obligations to schools, to policemen, to teachers, to all the civil servants that fall within our organization, to all the subsidized foundations and associations that carry out much needed work on behalf of government, including the St. Martin Development Fund, including the NSI for sports, including, and I can go on and on. Government relies on income generated through our economy to be able to carry those monthly, let's say, expenditures, necessary things to be paid out. That is outside of the external requests. This is just standard operations. And our salaries alone cover about 14 million per month. Yeah. So that reality in needing financial support, the Netherlands said, okay, we have been supporting you, but we don't find that you're executing what needs to be executed to improve your resiliency to external shocks, your ability to handle your own business when a shock hits, even though it is clear that even bigger countries like Spain and Italy and France and all the rest also had serious problems maintaining the economic balance or the financial balance necessary after pandemic and the shutdown of the economic sector. Us being a tourism country, relying heavily on persons flying here, we were hard hit in terms of our income. We would drop down to nothing. And then when it started to come back, 20%, 10%, 15, 20, slowly but surely going up based on us releasing the restrictions to allow others in. That has to be juxtaposed. That has to be in your mind when you go back to July 2020. This was right out of the lockdown. And we hear just before the Kingdom Council of Ministers meeting, this entity is coming. It will have these powers. We haven't seen the document. You're expected to agree to this for further liquidity support. We did not agree. We did not agree on the way it was done. We did not agree in what we were even hearing, because not much was said. When we saw the actual documents, we were like, absolutely not. That was Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin in July, stood their grounds. However, what did the Dutch government do? Through its Ministry of BZK and the State Secretary in charge of Kingdom Relations, they continue to mention stuff like, you didn't meet the conditions for the liquidity you already received. which was that you had to pass the pension law, you had to pass this, you had to cut your salaries, you had to cut this, you had to cut the other. We continue to fight that aspect of cutting salary. You can remember this, right, Cedric? We did not cut our civil servant salaries. We did cut our vacation payout by 50%, and that was based on the fact that we only had that much funds to be able to pay out at all. And what we explained to our civil servants was, if we pay you out of the full June expectation, by August there would be no funds in the till to pay salaries. And we as a government took the concerted decision to maintain salaries over vacation pay for sustainability, because at the end of the day, that is what your mortgages, your loans, and everything else, your cost of living on a monthly basis is linked to. So we went back and forth with the CFT through our finance ministry, and at the end, we were able to come to some agreements, even though we didn't agree with them. But at the end of the day, what are we to do when our all other possibilities for income is blocked through this kingdom cooperation? And so that's where we ended up. We fought against it. Curacao agreed. Aruba the following month agreed. And all of this happened up to November of 2020. And still St. Martin did not agree. Did not agree. However, back in December, when now we're down to not being able again. So what liquidity support we had, we stretched it. We got a small amount after we had done enough, according to them, for the second tranche commitments. And we got another little tranche, but that quickly evaporated as well. And here we were in December, back to almost nothing. Not being able to guarantee salaries for January now. We could pay you for Christmas, but we can't pay you for January. A lot of rhetoric out there, Cedric, not one solution as to how to rectify that situation. And I think that is what the people of St. Martin should remember. Not what can happen down the line, but what was happening at the time. And this government did not flip-flop. We did not change our minds. We accepted to go along with the trajectory, which allows us, once the Council of State has rendered an advice, to then jump in and continue to fight the battle, which is where we are right now. So that the people of St. Martin
transition into the current aspects of where we are, where we're going to take this thing, because the distractions is a very unhealthy thing, especially in the middle of a pandemic and trying to get ourselves back up and running, and doing so facing 6 months out of every year a hurricane season that's coming up on us very, very quickly as we transition into the second quarter of the year. But Prime Minister, let's focus in on that aspect there, where we currently are since December 2020.
Yes, so since 2020, December, the agreement, which is a mutual agreement between St. Martin and the Ministry of Basic Care, between St. Martin and the Dutch government, represented by the State Secretary of Basic Care, to receive the third tranche of liquidity support, to also have the agreement on the establishment of the reform and development packages, which the COHO, the law, so which was the CHE at the time, changed with Curacao, making it the COHO, the Caribbean Organ for Reforms and Development. In Dutch, the acronym is COHO. That organization would monitor, that entity would support, but still what had been submitted to the Council of State was under constructs that we didn't agree with. We had the agreement that we would have the opportunity after it comes back to make the necessary changes, especially if they were highlighted also by the Council of State. That agreement we got from the Dutch government. So we agreed to move on with the trajectory. We do not agree with the cohort that is there, but we will allow it to run its course, whereby we'll have the opportunity to get into the nitty-gritties of what needs to be changed. And that is precisely where we are now. From January come down to now, we have been meeting with our Secretaries General platform representing each ministry, finalizing what objectives St. Martin has to fill in the measures that were proposed in the country packages for St. Martin. A lot of these measures that were proposed were based on assumptions, were based on whether it's social media things that have been mentioned about what goes on or doesn't go on here in St. Martin. And we have been able to actually say that is not the case. This research shows this. This is how far we are with that. And each ministry is filling in where we are at the moment, what we want to do, how we want to achieve it. Those are St. Martin's objectives. And that's why I've said, Cedric, St. Martin has been open to move forward to make the necessary improvements. We just do not agree in the manner in which it is being executed under or proposed under a coho. Where we are now is a mutual agreement. I will execute these things over the next few months based on this timeline, together with my ministry. Your representatives will meet, technical assistance will be rendered if necessary, and we move on like that. The implementation plan was finalized as per our agreement signed in December, and also in early January discussed. We had April 1st as a deadline. March 16, the Council of Ministers approved it. It was supposed to be handled in the Kingdom Council of Ministers meeting today. It was not. Why? Why? Conditions set to move forward have been met by this country. However, the Kingdom Council, through the Ministry of Basic Care and the State Secretary, the Prime Minister, whomever else, is questioning a petition from Parliament. Is putting the country at risk, though the country, the civil servants, the people who are the executive body within the Council of Ministers have agreed with the trajectory, have received the support of Parliament for the trajectory for the same reason. Parliament will get its opportunity down the road. Down the road. They will have the opportunity to debate it. And when they get that law, if it's not taken off the books, it will be with the amendment St. Martin and the other two countries have brought forth. We must have a consensus moving forward.
Inside Government with the Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs, speaking concerning the COHO, the Caribbean Reform Entity, Body for Reform and Development. We're going to talk about the aspect of the advice related to this organization has been leaked and how it affected the three countries. This discussion with the Prime Minister continues right after the break. You're viewing and listening to Inside Government. Stay with us.
Vaccines saves approximately 2 to 3 million lives every year and are therefore one of the most effective medical intervention ever invented. A vaccine protects you, but additionally it also protects your family, friends, and vulnerable people in your community. The more people get vaccinated, the harder it will be for the virus to spread. When enough people are vaccinated to create herd immunity, it can put an end to the pandemic. The government can then scale down the coronavirus restrictions and the tourists can return, which is vital for our economy. The COVID-19 vaccine will be free of charge for everyone. It is not mandatory to take the vaccine, but it is highly encouraged. If you have questions about your own specific situation, discuss them with your doctor. In the meantime, we must be responsible and keep practicing the COVID-19 safety measures like wearing your mask, washing hands, and maintaining social distance. This public service announcement has been brought to you by the Department of Collective Preventive Services and the Department of Communication.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second half of Inside Government. If you're just tuning in, I'm having a conversation with the Prime Minister, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs, as it relates to the COHO, that is the Caribbean Body for Reform and Development, COHO for short. And Prime Minister was talking about the process and trajectory related to this particular entity. PM, I wanted to talk about or reinforce with the public of St. Martin when it comes to legislation, especially in our brand new democracy, that this is a process that doesn't happen, as we would say, today for tomorrow. And is in fact is a process that needs to take place. Now, as we are going through this, and we understand what we're dealing with here, challenged economy, seeking equal partnership within the kingdom that we are mutually respectful of each other's needs, people living up to their responsibilities as agreed upon from kingdom level, as we are a small developing democracy. How does this process work? Remind us about the legislative process, especially as it relates to the cohort.
Yes. So the cohort trajectory of its law. It's a law the Ministry of Basic Care presented, had agreement with Curacao a little while later, and this was approved in the Kingdom Council of Ministers to go to the Council of State, which, if you compare to our process, is like the Council of Advice, but for the kingdom, for kingdom laws. So that went to the Kingdom Council of Advice. It is there from since December, I would assume. There was break, Christmas, whatever the case may be. We were awaiting this response. The trajectory of it is that after you receive that response, it goes back to the country that submitted it, which was BZK, the Ministry of BZK of the Netherlands. Because it is a consensus law, it has to be shared with the other 3 countries. It was received by BZK apparently on the 11th of March. We received it on the 19th of March with the request to come to the table to have discussions, put together teams, agreement to put together teams to discuss it. So this is the normal trajectory. This is a period of time now where the criticisms and concerns of the Council of State can be addressed. After they have been addressed, the process then goes back to the Kingdom Council of Ministers, who, after approval, forwards it to the second chamber and the other parliaments of the countries involved, meaning Curacao, Aruba, and St. Martin. Then is when the parliaments will get to debate that law. It will require also the input of the 4 parliaments to be able to be ratified. It cannot be ratified with one. So the governments come to consensus after this point where we are now. And what has been made very clear is that the criticisms of the Council of State fall directly in line with our criticisms since July, August, September, October, November, December, right down to the end of 2020 and onwards. Not because, this is where the confusion is being, let's call it, the donkey is being ridden on this little bit of confusion and exploiting people who may not understand the process. Because we signed on to start with the country packages and to follow this trajectory is why we are here today. I don't know if that's clear. Without us agreeing to the package, it would have been, or to the trajectory of the cohort, it would have been solely Curacao, because they agreed since November. Curacao, the advice would relate solely to them. It would have been a bilateral agreement between Curacao and the Netherlands. But at the end of it, December had we not agreed upon, we don't know what financial state we'd be in today. We don't know where we would be, and it wouldn't necessarily count for us. But since we also gave our comments in the Kingdom Council of Ministers, in the press, on the floor of Parliament, a motion was passed in July or in August, I'm not sure anymore. There were further motions. The cohort as is unacceptable. But you had to agree, unprecedented. Countries, you have to agree that you're going to follow this trajectory to receive further funds. Countries, you're going to have to, your parliament has to agree. Whilst in my letter of the 16th from the same state secretary, he is saying that the parliaments don't have a role in this part right now, because this part is by the executive branches of government of 4 countries to work on the NADA report, the further report to the advice of the Council of State. The parliaments will get their turn once it gets to the second chamber and the parliaments. So then why are you asking for the parliaments to agree or mention that they agree to anything now if their turn doesn't come now, if they have not seen the law, if they have not seen the Council of State's advice? But it got leaked. It got leaked, and now everyone knows. And so we agreed as 4 countries, it's leaked. Share it publicly with your parliaments and whomever you need to share it with. And the Ministry of Basic Care also shared it publicly on their sites. So it's available widely. It's a simple read. Anyone, do a Google Translate on it if you must. Read what it says. But come down all through the advice, and at the end it states that the COHO as presented is unfitting for the purpose and the intention for which it was created. The intention, as per the Dutch, was to strengthen these islands, was to ensure that we become more sustainable by putting the necessary reforms in place and their willingness to assist on a technical and financial level. However, it does not state how, it does not state when, it does not state any of that. But the COHO as presented afforded the Minister of Basic Care powers that were incongruent, not in alignment with the powers that should exist in this kingdom as per our statutes. We have been saying this from day one. Our agreement to go through the process is to allow us to reach here today so that that can be adjusted. We made a counter proposal back in August. It was ignored. You have not achieved your tranche 2 liquidity support conditions, so we are not even entertaining you, St. Martin. There was no empathy for what we were saying, not in the Kingdom Council of Ministers and not in the Ministry of Basic Care. Yet, in the interest of our people, I chose to fight according to the law. And I allowed the trajectory to start so that we could be here today to be able to sit as 4 countries, hopefully now, with the mutual respect that we deserve to achieve the full measure that we need of assistance, but not that you are removing any authorities that belong with St. Martin, with our parliament, with our governor, with the already established authorities. As a matter of fact, with everything else going on in parliament and with everything else going on in the kingdom, the question is even whether certain of those authorities are overvoted, as they see. But that's for another chapter. Right now, we're dealing with the excessive authorities that were put in the original draft of the COHO. Even with the amendments of Curacao and Aruba, did not take enough into consideration that this was supposed to be put in place to assist the countries to stand on their own feet and not take up their authority.
Prime Minister, before we close off with establishing what is the move forward, I want to ask you to comment on the criticism you're receiving from across the aisle in regard to headlines that we read that says, who's going to save us from the Prime Minister? What would your response be to that, where you're being projected as being someone who eventually still gave into something that we still consider to be the quote unquote indecent proposal? What would your comments be?
It is, was, and remains an indecent proposal, and you can go back in the archives to hear me say that. St. Martin was seen as the rebel in the kingdom with the way we took our stance. Yeah? We were not getting cooperation. We were being punished monthly, extending, and let's say, as some have said in the past, the goalpost continues to be pushed off, and even now, it's been pushed again. So do you want to lynch this Prime Minister? Go right ahead. But not one solution has come forth from all of the loud mouths that are out there trying to capitalize on what they see as a failure of this government. This government has been open and transparent with the people of St. Martin, has gone to Parliament upon invitation and even upon my own recognizance to ensure that they're aware of what is happening. And each time that the demand was there for support, do you have support in your Parliament, Prime Minister? I had support, not just from my coalition, from more than the coalition. 12, 13, up to 14 members of Parliament supported us to move through the trajectory because they understand that within the trajectory, you have the opportunity to still fight. It does not mean you agree with what is submitted. It means that you will still get the opportunity to fight. And that some cannot see that and cannot understand that, that is for their own responsibility. But it is unfortunate that they prey on the minds of the people of St. Martin and insult them stating that we have been flip-flopping. I have never, ever flip-flopped. I have decided to fight the battle this way after December based on the fact that there were no finances available. None. No one was offering to give us $500 million, guilders, or whatever to sustain us for the next year. Because the financial assistance we need, Cedric, is not for this month. It's not for this quarter. It is projected that we will need it at least up to mid-2022. Okay? That's the reality. So getting a little assistance that we had put out for back then in October, had that come through, that 75 million, it would have lasted till December. January would have still bring more needs, more wants. I have to think across the board. I have to think of the bigger picture. And others in their function right now can just throw rocks. That's all they can do at this time. But who in the kitchen, as they say, feel the heat. And when I have to ensure that my people can eat, I will fight and fight and fight. But I accepted that in this function right now, the process for us to continue to have that discussion is now. And I will continue to inform the people of St. Martin when the roadblocks are thrown up and what our next steps are. And I will not do this without ensuring that politically I'm covered and that I have the support of all who I need to be able to move forward. St. Martin is in a good position now. Curacao and Aruba is in a good position now because everything we have said has been validated by an independent body looking at the kingdom, looking at the statutes, and looking at what has been proposed. And they said it is unacceptable, it is far-reaching, it removes authorities, it's against the statute, the kingdom statutes. And for that, we are happy because now we have the evidence to sit around the table and say, Bezeka, you got to come better than this.
Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs. Prime Minister, it's all the time we have in this edition of Inside Government. Thank you very much for taking the time out to bring us up to speed in regard and informing the general public as it relates to the COHO and what the government of St. Martin is going through as this process continues. Thank you so much for being a part of the program.
Thank you, and I'm always looking forward to the next time.
We look forward to...
In the meantime, be safe. Remember to stay COVID-free and follow all the protocols. Get vaccinated so that we can get back to normal as soon as possible.
Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Silveria Jacobs, thank you so much for being a part of the program. And to our radio listeners and television viewers, thank you for tuning in and being a part of Inside Government. If you've missed a broadcast, be sure to log on to video on demand to the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin. That's facebook.com/SXMGOV. If you haven't quite yet subscribed to the YouTube channel of the Government of St. Martin, be sure to do that. Hit that bell for notification of all future programming coming out of the Department of Communication at youtube.com/Government of St. Martin. And for radio playback, be sure to tune in to St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM throughout the course of the day. On behalf of the Cabinet of the Prime Minister of St. Martin, all of us here at the Department of Communication, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks for tuning in.